So thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to launch this new series. We have been hosting a middle year series going on to year 3, and we thought this was a great opportunity for us to look at extending it to secondary. So thank you for being at the very first session. As you can see on the calendar, we have 2 more sessions with possibly a 4th session being added maybe in May, where we have a date secured for that. So really excited to have that conversation about all things secondary. We know folks are doing really important work across the province, and we don't always have the opportunity to come together and share. So we'd really like to acknowledge a partnership with UBC, the Rural Education Advisory, the Ministry of Education, and the Greater Victoria School District. Thanks to Dr. Leighton Schneller for being a presenter and a facilitator and a huge supporter of this work. And also would like to acknowledge and thank Miriam Miller and Denise Augustine for being here today to ground us and support the work. Well, slowly changing. I would like to acknowledge with gratitude that I'm a settler on the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, the Lekwungen speaking people. I chose this image because for a long time, working in Couch and then coming to Victoria, I've known that cedar is an important tree for Coast Salish people. And during the last week of September, during the week of Truth and Reconciliation, our Indigenous Education Department invited us to a brushing off ceremony with elders. And I personally met Bernadine, who I'd not met before, and she shared the significance of cedar as she did the brushing off ceremony with me. It was profound, and it really touched me and changed me. And I think I moved from knowing to feeling. And when I was thinking about this series and us moving forward together, a hope for the work might be that we move more from knowing and to that deep work of feeling. And how can we support each other in making a difference for the students that we have the pleasure and opportunity to support and work with, and also the families and communities that we serve. So the hope for this session is for us, I use the hashtag sometimes better together, because I know that we are better together. And when we can lean into this work in the service of students and families, it's much more enriching. So thank you so much. And I'm now would like to ask Denise Augustine, Superintendent of Indigenous Education, new to your role. Congratulations, Denise, on your new role. Welcome you to share some words with us.
It's good day, everybody, my respected friends. I just invite you to take a moment and acknowledge where you're calling from in the chat. What is the traditional territory where you're gathered and doing your work today? I'm calling into you today from Couch and Territory, the territory of the Hulkmeena people. This land here has been unceded, and I identify as a Hulkmeena woman with mixed ancestry. On my mom's side, I have Hulkmeena ancestry with a little bit of Portuguese and English, and on my dad's side, I have English, French, and Métis ancestry. I am the daughter of Kwatlamat, also known as Jane Marston, the granddaughter of Edith Sylvie. I'm a Chemainus First Nation member, and my dad is David Marston. I have 2 grown daughters, and 5 months and 2 days ago became a grandmother. So that's very exciting, and has given me a little bit of a new perspective. I am on secondment to the Ministry of Education from Couch and School District. And as Tammy mentioned, a new position, actually 2 new positions were created, Superintendent of Indigenous Education and an Executive Director of Indigenous Education, also a secondee. And what I'm really moved by is the message this gives to the sector, to all of us working out in schools, that elevating and changing the educational experience of Indigenous learners continues to be a priority. This isn't something that's going away. As a matter of fact, we're actually going to amplify it. We're going to work harder and deeper together. I am really grateful that the ministry has become a partner in this important work that School District 61, rural schools, UBC have been doing together, because what we know is that we're not quite there yet. if you take a longitudinal look at, for instance, let's just look at grad rates. I know it's only one measure, but it is one measure. Let's take a long look and you'll see that provincially, there was when we began paying attention, there was quite an increase in how many kids we were getting through school, and we've kind of plateaued. And what that's saying is that, we kind of need to dig in a little bit deeper and figure out what else we can do. We need to get to those harder to reach places in our organizations and in our practice. Specifically, we see First Nations learners on reserve graduating at an average across the province about 60%. And we can do better than that. We want every single Indigenous learner to graduate with a full spectrum of options. And that's good for all of us. I have the privilege or the punishment, maybe, I don't know which one it is, of looking at more of the data and looking specifically at numeracy and literacy, and seeing those as foundational skills. Again, we're seeing that the numeracy scores for our Indigenous learners are something about 40%, not 40% meeting or exceeding. So we need to elevate that. What I know in all of that work is, when in my little bit of time with the ministry, we talk about governance and policy and legislation, and what I keep bringing back to the table is all of that is fine and well, but it doesn't make one lick of difference if it doesn't impact the learner in the classroom. And so it's really, that is the reason that I'm so grateful to be here, with so much gratitude for each of you for showing up and for looking at what can we do better, what can we do differently, can we do more of that we're already doing to engage every single learner, and in particular our Indigenous learners. So thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and thank you for being here.
I'm not on mute anymore. Thanks, Denise. I raised my hands too. It's so fun for Tammy and Denise and I to be co-facilitating at the beginning, because we've known each other, well, decades, people. Decades we've been doing this work together in secondary schools, thinking about what we can do differently, and that it is in our power and capacity to make learning more engaging, more meaningful, more powerful, and more equity-oriented. I am going to do a slightly longer territorial acknowledgement, everybody, as your host, as your MC today and for the series. My name's Leighton. Hi, everyone. My name's Leighton Schnellert, and I'm the Eleanor Ricks Professor of Rural Teacher Education at UBC. I live and learn on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx people as a settler guest. The Syilx Nation is, to this day and every day forward, the rightful caretaker of this territory. It is therefore my obligation to acknowledge, respect, and learn from the Syilx and their knowledges, their languages, their histories, the richness and diversity within the nation itself, as well as the ongoing relationship to the land and the natural world that exists as part of the way of being, the culture, and just existence as Syilx. I've learned so much from working with elders, and specifically my research partner, the Penticton Indian Band, and it's my obligation to aspire towards better and deeper understanding and reciprocity in acts of decolonization, both personally and professionally. And that's me picking mountain tea with Anona Campi, my Syilx Knowledge Keeper partner. And we have this wonderful partnership together, this work that we're doing with the Southern Okanagan School Districts, where we're learning with Okanagan knowledge keepers and elders to understand how it's not about, I need something to do in my classroom related to what I'm teaching. It's actually about, how do I welcome local Indigenous ways of knowing into our spaces based on values, practices, and the land. I'm going to talk ever so briefly. Miriam's just sent me magical texts. Your time's almost up, Schnelly. So Miriam and I are so happy to have planned this first session together and to be invited to do this work together with you. I'm going to anchor this work in something that we actually, when we created what we're calling the recently new curriculum, we anchored it in a variety of research, including Canadian research that was done with adolescents across Canada, where we asked them about their school experience. So we didn't just look at data about student performance, we did, but we also said, tell us about your learning, about your experience, about what's meaningful. And so this national study really was about looking at student engagement and academic outcomes. And so you can kind of see how Tammy and Denise's intro connect with me, and my job is to set you up for Miriam. In that research, they showed us, or they explained that based on what we saw or what we heard from students, right? Trends from students connected to, students created surveys as well, completed surveys as well. They were able to connect that outcomes of students to what students said, to directions and pedagogy. And here are the big things that came up. And so this might be familiar if you've heard me speak in the last 10 years, because we use this as the undergirding for our shift in curriculum, specifically with adolescent learners in mind. One is that kids in secondary schools need a chance to see how subjects are interconnected. We don't want kids to leave secondary thinking, I'm a math kid or I'm an English kid, but recognizing that we are whole people who are competent and capable in things, and we want to make those connections in terms of interdisciplinary learning. We want our learners to feel and be respected. We want teenagers to feel respected in school and also to be respected, that they have something to say. And so one way to do that is giving them opportunities to solve real problems, to engage with real things from the world. And so one of the suggestions was around, of course, learning from each other. The classic turn and talk is still alive and well, everybody, but also to be turning and talking to people from the community, a chance to learn from folks who do the work in the field as experts. Boy, Zoom has really helped us out in that way in the last 20 or so months. We want teenagers to feel like they're making a difference in the world, that they have knowledge that matters, that they can use somewhere. And I already talked about connecting with experts and expertise, like people from our community. And then lastly, there's a phrase from literacy education that kind of undergirds a lot of research, which is learning floats on a sea of talk. Learning is oral to begin with. And so we can really learn with and connect with Indigenous ways of knowing when we come to understand that we want to be engaging with story, we want to be talking about concepts, and we want to be sharing with each other what we think is going on, because that meaning that we make is how we move forward. So one way to think of this is many of us came through a transmission model of education, right? Here's some stuff, learn it, give it back, write the test, and if you're like me, forget it. But you know, sometimes I had to teach a block of physics. So I remembered that thing that I'm like, I just need that to get my chemistry. Then we talk about how we as secondary educators often work from a generative, that's like a constructivist perspective, everybody, where kids get to work with a big idea, right? Like, what's going on here? What can I do with this? How can I show this? Let me demonstrate my understanding of it. What we really want to connect with today is that we're really sitting in a place where we're trying to engage in transformative pedagogy, which recognizes that kids need to feel some agency. So I was gonna say some energy, and then it became something else. Some agency for their learning. They feel some control, that we recognize that emotions and control are part of who we are and how we learn. And we have to foster kids' capacity to self-regulate their learning in terms of what they're doing, and also in connection to the place that we're in. That learning is connected to the land, to the community, to our place. And when we engage in and look at learning with, can I call them interdisciplinary lenses, where we're like, what's this from an environmental perspective? What's this from a political perspective? What's this from a mathematical perspective? When we have those opportunities, and when students get those opportunities to think in those ways, then they bring understandings together connected to the real world. I do want to highlight that just because I'm pointing out transformative as this place, this holistic education space that we're in right now, doesn't mean that there isn't a place for generativity, which is kids demonstrating important knowledge, but there's also a place for transmission, right? There is also a place to say, here's an important thing. This is an electron. It carries the charge. Remember that. Now do something with the electron. That's generative. And now let's apply that to the world. That's transformative. But it's really exciting to be in this place where we know engagement connects to application, where you feel connected to and ownership of the learning and perhaps even the content. I see Kim Lee is sneaking in from Yellowknife, which must suggest that I should go to the next slide. Hi, Kim Lee. So in our journey together in this series this year, for 3 official and perhaps 1 bonus session, May 2nd, put it in your books now, people. Today's session, Miriam's going to engage with us around social emotional learning, research and practice related to social emotional learning, which of course is important to us at all times, specifically in the fall, but particularly right now as we try to counter that conversation around learning loss, which is not helpful for anybody, right? Operating from a deficit perspective only helps us think that we're working from a deficit. And so we're really thinking about social emotional learning in like a triple scoop way right now, Miriam. Next session, we have Beth Applewhite, who's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and Leona Prince, who's over beside me in that photo, and they're going to engage with us around a conversation around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And hopefully Denise will be able to come back and do a little bit of the intro with me for that session as well. And then our third session is around student voice and agency, and we're going to connect that to the conversation around assessment in secondary and communicating student learning. There has not been a hotter topic in secondary, people, than assessment, but now it's super hot because the reporting order and the communicating student learning order, it's something we can look at and say, what can we do with this? So welcome to the series, everyone. Something we do in this series is we just pop into breakout groups and meet some other people from across the province, apparently also the Yukon and Northwest Territories, and Pam Spooner is sneaking in right now, so I won't put us into small groups until she gets in. Prince George in the house. And all we're going to do in our little check-in small groups is a chance to say to whoever you end up with, what brought you here today? And maybe how are you thinking about engagement or equity or diversity? You're only there for about 5-6 minutes. So you might just get done with like, here's why I'm here. But also you might talk a little bit about, what does this make me think of already? And then when we come back, Miriam will pick up the baton, the torch, or any other metaphor we can think of, maybe the shoe from The Life of Brian, and engage with us in some thinking around social emotional learning. So we'll see you in about 6 minutes, everyone.